Good morning, everyone. This is What's Your IQ? Let's talk about our impact quotient with Nancy Barbie. And I'm delighted today to have as my guest the Jones County, that's in North Carolina, County Manager Kyle Smith. And Kyle, let's talk about Jones County a little bit. Um, Tell me what's new and what's happening in Jones County now.
Yeah, so we got a lot of good things happening in Jones County. The best way to break this up is probably more by department. So, from an economic development, everybody likes to talk about creating jobs, opportunities for people moving into our area and live in the area, work in the area, play in the area. So, economic development wise, we're building an industrial shell building to the tune of 20,000 square feet in our industrial park located in Trenton. The goal here is for this building to be fully constructed by August and for that building to be built where it's pretty much move-in ready for a business or an entrepreneur to come in, create somewhere between 10 to 25 jobs in a space and provide good wage jobs and opportunities here locally in Jones County. So that's certainly got us all excited, and we broke ground on that facility just a couple of weeks ago. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, over the past year, as you know, Commissioner, we constructed two new EMS stations, so we are continuing to expand our emergency services and public safety in general, just how and really it's life here in Jones County. And if you're in need, we want to get to you as quick as possible. So that's what that means. Of course, we've had some impacts pretty significantly in the past with natural disasters such as hurricanes. So we renovated our emergency operations center. It just gives us the space that we need to make those critical decisions when we're under a state of emergency here in the county. So it's kind of one of those things where we hope we never need it, but we know that we will. We know this coming one day, and we want to make sure we're prepared and have the resources to utilize for our citizens when that time comes.
Mm.
Another thing that we're working on pretty handily here is just a general, nothing too flashy, just a public works complex. So we're going to be building that here very soon. We're going to have a groundbreaking for that very soon out beside our EMS Station 1. And this is just a pretty standard 100 foot by 100 foot metal building with a big concrete slab, some floor drains so that our public works team who own and operate the regional water system here in Jones County can go in and just perform the duties that they do day in and day out, provide maintenance on their equipment in-house, have a heat and cooled space where they can do that in a safe area. So we're kind of excited about that as well. Recreation and wellness, I think that's a great opportunity to get our kids involved, get our youth involved, get our senior citizens involved, and really what we're doing at our rec and wellness complex is we're trying to align that complex with the county's vision. If you look on the county website, you'll see that our vision is to create an environment where people want to basically a kid or a youth member will go off to college and then come back to. And that's our dynamic. It's not so much that we're trying to recruit, people from all across the nation as much as it is to retain the ones that grow up here. We want them to go to school, develop a trade, and then bring that skill set back to our community here in Jones. So with that, we're currently building a playground. We've recently built a national fitness court for outdoor fitness means, and we're going to be soon constructing a recreation and wellness complex. And what that would mean is indoor gymnasiums, likely some multi-purpose rooms, fitness courts, and even some outdoor pickleball courts, that type of thing. So we really tried to make that community, get the community involved with that project, see what they want in that facility. And so that's kind of the next big project on our list is just to enhance our recreation offerings here in the county.
Yeah, I talked to David Maller, the director of recreation, about that. I'm excited about that to have something right here in the county. I don't have to go to New Bern to the gym. I don't have to go to Jacksonville to the gym. So to have it right here, to be able to and meet, and meet up with people that are right here from Jones County too. I think that'll bring a lot of people together and build community better. Yeah, that's great. What else is going on? Tell me about it.
Oh wow! So we're getting ready to go into more housekeeping stuff. We're getting ready to go into our budget cycle. So at this point in the February, I've we've had our board of commissioners retreat. I've outlined the goals that to the department heads at this point, and of course. Generally, Jones County's been more conservative driven in nature in the past that are going to want to keep the tax rate the same as we move forward. So we're going to try to do that all while keeping our wages competitive with surrounding counties that are historically just bigger than us, right? But it's important that I call it watering our good horses. And as you know, Commissioner, we got some good people in place right now, and we need to make sure we retain that local talent. So with that, going into the budget, the department heads are kind of working on that at this point. From a water system standpoint, we're currently providing water to the town of Pollocksville while they make some improvements to their system, which is it's just good that we're able to do that type of thing, and that's the meaning of different partnerships, and we've done that for towns like Maysville in the past as well. So we're certainly grateful for that. Me and the chairman just went up to a NACO legislative conference this past weekend, and that just gives us an opportunity for us, it's really one thing, right? We're not diving so much into the policy side or even the politics in general of our nation, but we're diving into, hey, piece of the funding pie. We want to talk about appropriations coming to Jones County from the federal government level. So we were up there talking about our recreation and wellness center complex as our priority number one, and what we want to do with that, Miss Nancy, is we want to get enough appropriated to us to have a facility that could also be used as an emergency shelter if we were to get a category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane. The county currently doesn't have a structure with those capabilities. So we've been advocating for that. Of course, with that, it means the building's going to need to be a little more reinforced, but we think we got a good argument, right? Coming off of 2018,
Hmm.
a lot of properties were
Yeah.
bought out, a lot of properties were elevated or structures were elevated, but as you know, when a flood comes, we're typically naive to the fact that, it may be, maybe we don't believe what we hear on the weather station and we stay in the community too long before we evacuate. So we need a safe place to get those community members when that storm happens. So also, this is kind of juicy, and I haven't really released this a ton, but I did talk to this in Congress with Senator Tillis and Congressman Murphy pretty hefty. But we're looking at a future partnership with New River YMCA. So excited about that potentially coming to Jones County. So that's a big
All
lift,
right.
and it's something I'm been working on with Charlie over at New River Y for a few months now. So excited to see where that leads us in the future. So. That was priority number one. Of course, I'll go ahead and tell you what else me and Chairman Emery were talking about. We were also talking about some communication upgrades, building out a communications tower in the Maysville Long Point area. Historically, an area where dispatchers struggle to get communication to our public safety members. It's just a dead zone. And we've also looked at requesting some money for some radio upgrades, not only across our paid staff departments, but also for our volunteer fire and EMS departments as well. So we were there advocating for that. And then the last thing we were looking at is advocating to get what few buildings are left in flood-prone areas out of those flood-prone areas, including the county administration building. I'm actually sitting in the office that flooded in 2018.
Mm.
Board of Elections, a critical service. We certainly would want to look at putting that facility in an area that's not as prone to flooding. So that was another priority of ours, and really it all revolves around just making our footprint um, a little more resilient to those flood prone areas so that we can do the job that we were hired to do day in and day out, which is, one, improve the quality of life of our citizens, but also respond in times of need. So that's
Yeah.
our ultimate goal.
That's for sure. Well, I was going to ask you what new innovations is the county exploring, but I believe you've covered that pretty much. I mean, those new things you're moving forward and making sure that all bases are covered, it sounds like. Tell me a little bit more about what you discussed or what you found out. Did you get any positive results in Washington, D.C. when you went visit? Did they give you any hope of more funding or more innovative things coming to Jones County?
Yeah, it's definitely up in the air right now, right? So, there's a lot of people making these asks, and there's going to be a lot of requests going in, over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I will tell you this. I told the chairman on the way home, I felt as good about those conversations as I felt in my 4 years as the county manager in Jones. I feel like we've done a really good job of explaining it. I feel like we've done a good job of using what we've learned politically in the past 2 or 3 years to really shape how we explain our needs here in Jones County. And that just comes with experience, right? I just learned, learned how to create
Right.
that knack. Chairman done a good job, politically just, getting us in the room, and then he kind of turns it over to me to do most of the talking. But, Congressman Murphy was very supportive of the conversations we've had. I followed up with his LA. We've talked 8 times since Tuesday, I think. So Jones County is hot on the minds of our federal legislation currently, which is good. We want to be remembered. We want them to know where we come from. And it's important to remember that these things we're advocating for don't just positively impact the county. It's also a positive impact to our nonprofits, our municipalities, and Jones County as a whole. So, and
Hmm.
we kept that in mind certainly as we were there having those conversations.
Well, it sure does make a difference when your face is seen and when your voice is heard. So that does make a difference. And it sounds like you're really making that voice heard and making the voice of Jones County heard up in the big money pockets. So
Yeah,
that's great. Well, mostly we talk about in Jones County that we're a rural county. Agriculture is a big industry here. Eco tourism is, we hope, will be a big industry here. But how do you think the agriculture and land management affect the growth in the county, positively and negative? I mean, does it?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. So we don't currently have we do have an old land use plan in general, but we don't have any zoning on the county side currently. And the reason for that is just kind of pro property rights, right? Do what you want to with your property, that type of thing. At some point, that's probably going to need to change, at least to some sort of scale. And we have talked about it on the county side for the past, I don't know, 2 years. And basically that conversation has revolved around kind of protecting the outlying field at Oak Grove, which is owned and operated by Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point currently. So I think at some point there's going to be some type of zoning overlay that protects that facility, mainly from like tall structures, cell phone towers, that type of thing, making sure our military are supported here in Jones County. Agriculture in general, we are seeing some of our farmland and even timberland taken up by some residential growth, not a ton of commercial growth yet. But at some point we're going to want to get a little more, be a little proactive with this and make sure that places like Richlands, Onslow County don't spill over on us too fast, and that we can kind of lay this county out the way we want to and strategically grow, if you will.
Hmm.
We're kind of seeing some of that in Maysville already, some of that Jacksonville spillover with some of their housing projects down there. At some point, we've been very fortunate so far. A lot of the land that is being broken up is kind of families type stuff, or, historically somebody will pass away and there's a 4 or 5, 1 acre tracts along a roadway that are broken up. And this is good growth, right? It helps our tax base, don't get me wrong, but at some point, we're going to need to lay out like specific type neighborhood type growth as we expect, places like Maysville and Comfort to really begin to get some residential growth as we move forward.
Hmm.
So, and what we do with that is we just protect, the ag lands, right? We protect those large tracts of row crops and forest tracts that have been formed for so many years. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a catch-22. We want growth, but we want it to be planned growth or the growth that we want. So it's tough.
Well, that is true. And being a landowner, I'm well aware of that. Um, Knowing that, it's important to develop it the way you see that it'll be beneficial not just to family, but to the county as well and to the town. So yeah, that's great. What are some of our biggest challenges, Kyle, that you see in Jones County?
Yeah, again, we talked about this at the beginning of the call, but I think Jones County is a hidden gem. It's definitely one of the safe. I think it's one of the safest places that you can live. At some point we are going to want to strategically lay out this county so that we get more opportunities for this economic advantages. Some of these big manufacturing companies, even AI driven talents like data centers, that type of thing. And with that, we're going to need some partnerships for some wastewater enhancement projects and even water enhancement. We've been lucky on the county side to get some water improvement funding from the
Mhm.
state over the past couple of years. But what a lot, with environmental health, the way it's been strained with regulations over the past few years, at some point we're going to have to develop these wastewater systems into partnership somehow so we can get some of this industry growth. Because without wastewater and all the infrastructure in place, you're not going to get it. And the reality is, a lot of our lands that were perking 25 years ago, they're not perking because of the new regulations. So you have to rely on that wastewater infrastructure to be in place. So
Mm.
I think, just utilities in general is definitely something we need to keep, on the forefront of our mind as we move forward and take advantage of. And typically that's some of the, it's not easy, but that's some of the easiest advocating you can do is for wastewater and water improvements because that is an essential to the daily life.
True.
So if I had to pick one thing, I would say that's certainly the number one thing. On the broadband side, we do have a couple of pockets. We rely really heavily on internet, um, even with our youth, our senior population, everything's done online these days. So there are a couple of pockets of broadband, underserved and unserved areas that we need to continue to advocate for. And we've done a really good job over the past 3 or 4 years with advocating for broadband expansion. But there are a couple of pockets we need to make sure we get to because our goal is to have high-speed internet along every road in Jones County. So that's certainly a close number two.
That's true. Well, I just saw on the news, I think it was yesterday, that Amazon is opening a big facility in Onslow County. Why did they pick us? I mean, we're right down the road from Onslow County. Why does that happen? It seems like a lot of these big companies, and I hear a lot of times, population, 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 and I like to say my my words for this are, you know, Sam Walton didn't pick a big city when he first started. He picked a small place and a rural county. So why aren't we picked for things like that? Kyle, what do you see?
I think that's just an easy way to end the conversation, honestly. When I'm talking to some of these people, John and I have had some good conversations lately, and we got some pretty good stuff brewing in the on deck circle if you hear me. But it's what we're hearing directly from these good conversations are people can make an 80-minute drive, no problem. Some of these people we're talking to at this point are, good paying jobs and people are driving an hour and 20 minutes one way to get back and forth from that job. So to that, we'd be recruiting talent as far as Wake County.
That's right.
We could reach Carteret. So I think that's just a easy way to end the conversation if they don't want to talk about it anymore. I think for us, it kind of goes back to that utility infrastructure. And then for us on the county side, we need to make sure that we're advocating for utility infrastructure and land acquisition in general. So, you know, strategically having those sites is playing a big part in it as well. So we need to make sure we're close to what's our best road in the county? Highway 17 bypass. That's where we should really shift our focus as we move forward because that's our best road. That's our 4 lane. It's going to tie right into I-42. Um, so we should really make our focus more on Highway 17 bypass and where it comes up to the I-42 corridor where Jones and Creighton kind of meet. So, and that's where we're shifting our focus. And our first hurdle is land acquisitions, and that's what we're working on currently.
Okay. So, it is a global economy, whether we like to admit it or not. Um, how does that affect us in this small county in North Carolina as you see it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, with we're seeing a lot of like defense products being made because we're kind of between 3, 4 different military bases here in Eastern North Carolina. So we think we got a good opportunity for that type of thing. But politically, if you get a change in president or change in Congress leadership, the economy changes almost overnight sometimes. So a lot of times that may mean you're starting from ground zero or you're in a holding pattern. But for us, we just need to be ready and make sure we have all the mechanisms in place to succeed or land that big company and increase that tax base when the time comes, whether it's under the current economy, or under the economy we have 3 years from now. We just need to be well prepared for that.
Very true, very true. Well, it sounds like Jones County, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that the public doesn't know a lot about. So this is a great conversation. I'm glad to put this out there because you hear, oh, we're not doing anything, we're not growing, but we are. We are growing. And we are changing, and that's what happens when you have progressive people. Let's go back a few minutes, and then I have one other question for you. But you talked about at the very beginning of the conversation about that shell building. How do you think that's going to, are there any takers for that, people coming in, and how is that going to really move us forward?
Yeah, so we haven't really advertised that yet. We're gonna wait, and we're really leaning on people like Steve Yost, NC Southeast president, Joe Melvin, vice president. We're leaning on those guys for their expertise. You know, they committed a big funding contribution towards that project. But we're talking about some guys that got a lot of wisdom in the field of economic development and industry growth. You know, they've been around it. They've succeeded in capturing businesses across Eastern North Carolina over the past 20 years. They're like, we're going into this thing with a lot of confidence that we're not going to have any trouble filling that building. We're excited. They've made us excited based on the conversations. You know, we're going to offer a very competitive lease rate to get somebody in that building, provide those jobs, and try to get our Jones County residents some local jobs, right? So you're going to see a lot more about that building around the June timeline, and that's going to put us about 90 to 120 days out from that building having a certificate of occupancy. So.
Mm.
That's when you're going to see more about the actual ins and the outs advertisement on that building. So
That's yeah, that sounds great. I think that that'll happen. I think that once people see what can happen, that it'll happen more and more and more. And then I guess the goal of that is to get an incubator type business to start, build up, and then move somewhere else in the county, and then another one come in. Is that sort of the routine to?
yeah, we're going to build this building where it's very easily expandable. So if they got to a point where they needed to expand, they could knock a wall out pretty easily and add another 10,000 square feet. And that's something we're leaning on people like Chuck Hustis out of Bladen County, who's had a
Right.
ton of success with this business model. We're kind of under his advisement with this and that partnership. So we're excited, but you're certainly correct. And you know, that's kind of where we're working on at a 50,000 foot level is developing other areas where we can move that growing company to and keep them in Jones County, you know, 7 years down the road when they grow to that point. So you're exactly right.
So you grew up in Jones County. I grew up in Jones County. A lot has changed since I grew up. A lot has changed probably since you were a youngster as well, even though you're much younger than I am. But um, change is inevitable. We all know that. Where would you like to see Jones County in the next 20 years in your child's lifetime uh, and other young people's lifetime? Where would you like to see Jones County be in 20 years, say?
Yeah, you know, this is a tough question, right? Because I love Jones County. That's why I came back here, you know, now don't get me wrong, the 3 years I was at NC State, those were some of the best years of my life.
Right.
Now, I don't know that you could pay me enough to go back to Raleigh at this point. The traffic just drives me insane. But, you know, I think it kind of goes back to the county's vision. You know, for me, having a 2.5-year-old young girl at home, you know, wanting to create a community, an environment that she wants to come back to, whether she goes into healthcare like her mother or administration like her father, you know, teaching like her grandfather, whatever she wants to do in life, we want her to bring that knowledge back to our community and share it with others. So, creating an environment where people want to make a community impact, and we do, right? But getting the younger generations involved in, you know, these advisory boards or committees is very important. And it takes conversations like this to get the word out. And, you know, people want to be involved with something that's going good, right? Nobody wants to be involved with something that's not going good. So
True.
that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. We need to share this because people want to be involved with good conversation and things that are happening in a good way. Um, and I think that's it. We got the safe community. We got the good public school system. You know,
We
we
do.
need to make sure we share that. You got a state-of-the-art facility, the nicest building in the counties, the high school and the elementary school in Trenton. And your other elementary schools are thriving, no underperforming schools. And we need to make sure we share that in a strategic way so that people really know about Jones County and the hidden gem that it is.
That's exactly right. I grew up here. I left too, went to college. I lived in other places when I was younger, and I came back because I love the environment. I love the community. I know people here, and one thing good is there are pluses and minuses to being in a small county, but I know a lot of people. They know me, and I know I can call somebody if I need help. In a larger place, you're not quite able to do that as readily, and so it makes a difference. We've got a lot of assets in Jones County. We've got a lot of things that are happening in Jones County, things that are going to make our growth possible, and so. I want people to know that too, Kyle. So let's do more of these talks and keep people informed. I intend to share this with you so you can put it on the website and let people hear what's going on, and then I'm going to publicize it. So we've got to get our our face out there and our voice out there. Sounds like you're doing a lot of that. So thank you so much for being on this call today, and thank you for all that you're doing in Jones County, and I look forward to seeing what growth is going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of end by saying, without the Board of Commissioners giving me a conscious vision, and without us having these joint leadership and elected official meetings with the towns like we've been having, and certainly without the staff, including the department heads, being able to carry out their day-to-day duties and having just departmental visions, we can't do what we've created here. So we just need to keep doing what we're doing and moving forward for sure.
Absolutely. It does take a team. And thank you so much for leading that team and keeping us moving forward. And folks, if you want to get involved with Jones County and see what's happening, Kyle's door is open. I mean, he's busy. He's a busy fella, but his door is open. County commissioners are open. If you need to find out or want to find out, ask the source. Go to the source. Don't rely on somebody else telling you what is or what isn't happening. So go right to the source. So Kyle, thank you again for being here. This is Kyle Smith. He's the county manager of Jones County in North Carolina, people. Thank you for being my guest on What's Your IQ with Nancy Barbie. Thank you so much. I hope to see you soon.
Hey, I appreciate it so much, Miss Nancy.